Game week 5 is here. I'm going to run you through my team selection for this week and more importantly, my new chip strategy. Okay, so let's start with the defense. I've gone with Sales in goal against Burnley. Do I expect Nottingham Forest to set up differently to how they did against Arsenal now and just had more time on the training ground? The answer is yes. I do expect them to be a bit higher up in the defensive block. I do expect them to be a bit more proactive, a bit more attacking. But at the same time, I still... Listen... It's either start Sales or start Dubravka. I still think Nottingham Forest have a stronger defence than Burnley. I could obviously split my odds with one, obviously Nottingham Forest defender, one Burnley defender. But I'd rather just go all in on Nottingham Forest. I've gone with Sales. I've gone with Murillo. Of course, Murillo's in my team right now, but a lot of it just also depends on fitness. If he's confirmed out, then obviously I might play probably an Iliman in DI, who I'll touch on a bit later, or on a Steve from Burnley. But for now, I've gone with the Nottingham Forest double up. I've gone with Chris Richards against West Ham. Obviously, West Ham, another disappointing result against Tottenham. Chris Richards also did get some rest in the League Cup. He came on around the 60th minute. So that is obviously a positive in terms of they're clearly managing his minutes in terms of the midweek games. Because we also saw that in the Conference League qualification. So that's obviously something to keep an eye on. But more importantly, he also did hit the second penalty, by the way, in the penalty shootout for Crystal Palace. I'm not saying if Mateta's on the pitch, Chris Richards is going to be Crystal Palace's penalty taker, but listen, let me hope, innit? Let me hope. But at the end of the day, Crystal Palace probably should keep a clean sheet on paper against West Ham, so I've gone with him. I've gone to Cucurella. He got benched last week against Brentford. Do I expect that to be the same case against Manchester United? No, even though Chelsea obviously do have a Champions League game today against Bayern Munich, a big game for them. I think that Cucurella benching against Brentford was probably more to do with the international break. Well, I'm hoping anyway. He obviously had minutes for Spain, scored for Spain. So that's why I don't expect another benching in the Premier League for Cucurella. But at the same time, I think as the season goes on, then we can make proper judgment. But for now, I'm hoping he starts against United. I expect him to start against United because obviously United on paper, even though United are terrible, should be a tougher side than Brentford, even though the table don't prove that. So I do expect him to play. Porro's the other one. He's technically returned in every single game so far in the Premier League if we're including DEFCON. But at the same time, he's an asset that I'm starting to look a bit differently because obviously now he's lost set pieces to Simmons. Spurs, the next 3 fixtures are very, very good on paper, though, even though I do expect Brighton to score. But more importantly, I'm going to touch on my chip strategy a bit later on in this video. From game week 4 to when I want to transfer him out, he has to stay just because of Tottenham's fixtures. So that's my back line. Let's look at my midfield. Okay, so let's get onto the midfield and let's go from left to right. I've gone with Elliot Anderson. Listen, finally he got DEFCON last game against Arsenal, which was long overdue after the first 3 games, getting 11 DEFCON in every single one of those games. So that was obviously nice. At the same time, against Burnley, he'll probably have more, let's say, license to attack the box. We know Andrew will probably play a bit more of his, let's say, style of football. And at the same time, we saw Elliot Anderson does have the potential for attacking returns. In the first game week, he got an assist, I think it was. So that's something I'm very, very hopeful of. And he was either Elliot Anderson or, let's say, Iliman in DI. I think Liverpool away, obviously, is a tough fixture, 12:30 kickoff. In DI, obviously, has penalties, but do you really expect Everton to cause Liverpool a lot of problems? I think the answer... I think Elliot Anderson's probably more likely to get DEFCON than in DI is to getting an attacking return. Which is why I think Elliot Anderson's, let's say, floor for this week's higher. In DI, if he obviously gets Everton get a penalty, his ceiling might be higher. But I'm just going to go with the safety net of Elliot Anderson. Next is Salah. Listen, nothing needs to be said. 90-minute man on penalties for one of the best attacks in the league. Everton at home, Merseyside derby, early kickoff is a difficult fixture. But at the same time, he will probably be my captain this week again. The problem is there's not other, like, let's say, good fixtures that I want to attack this week. For example, Semenyo, if I do bring him in, he has Newcastle. Newcastle expected goals conceded are the best side in the Premier League according to that. So they've been very good defensively. Man City obviously have Arsenal. So you don't really want to captain, let's say, an Erling Haaland. Watkins has Sunderland. Listen, I think going into the season, we probably would have said Watkins is one of the best captaincy options for this week. But at the same time, no one's going to go there with right now with Ollie Watkins. No one's going to go there with Aston Villa. So that rules him out. So again, it's probably just the safest option to go with Mo Salah. I've also gone with Cody Gakpo. Listen, one thing I would say is we saw it, let's say, a lot against Burnley, which could be, let's say, a dilemma for Arne Slot going forward, where I feel like when you watch Cody Gakpo, especially against the lower blocks, and let's say his natural winger instincts, he makes his decision up very, very, like, let's say, quick. For example, when you watch Rio, when he came on, the 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid for Liverpool, it seemed like he was waiting until the last second to either find a pass, to find a shot, to find a cross, which makes it really, really unpredictable for defenders, especially against lower blocks. Whereas Cody Gakpo, there was a lot of times, for example, where Robertson made a great overlapping run and Cody Gakpo just didn't react because already his instinct was cut in, cross, or cut in, shoot. So that's something that I think going forward, especially against lower blocks, I do expect potentially Cody Gakpo's minutes to decrease because I just don't think he's as effective. But that's something I think, let's say, is more analysis on Cody Gakpo as a player rather than him as an FPL asset, and maybe something we want to keep looking at going forward, how maybe Arne Slot decreases potentially Cody Gakpo's minutes, because I think he probably will. The other man in midfield is Bruno Fernandes. Listen, we know with Bruno Fernandes, his penalties, his DEFCON. He's a 90-minute man. Other than that, I don't expect United to perform very, very well against Chelsea. United have been very, very poor this season. We saw it against Man City again. That game, Bruno Fernandes was nowhere near DEFCON either, because I just think City passed United off the park, essentially, kind of thing, innit? And Bruno Fernandes just couldn't get, let's say, anywhere near, which was interesting considering how well he rates to DEFCON. But listen, I've gone to Bruno Fernandes, but more importantly, it is down to my strategy, which I'm going to talk about a bit later. But let's get on to the attack first before I do that. And now the attack, and it can only be two people, sadly, and one of them is Ollie Watkins. Listen, Sunderland away on paper is a decent fixture. Do I expect Ollie Watkins to get a return? I think for me, the answer is no now. Listen, I've given up with Aston Villa, the only team in the top 7 divisions in England not to have scored a goal in the league, which is incredible. But the only bit of hope, let's say, was Harvey Elliott played in the League Cup game, scored for Aston Villa. Hopefully that gave Aston Villa as a team a bit of confidence that they can obviously score a goal, which is crazy saying that because I don't think anyone would have thought that at the start of the season. So I'm still going to stick with Ollie Watkins, even though he's bad. And he probably will come out in game week 6, which I'll talk about. And then the other man, João Pedro, again, slightly concerned for minutes with João Pedro this week against Manchester United, just because I expect him to start against Bayern Munich today. Then he's going to have played 3 games in a week. Listen, you know he's going to get reduced minutes potentially against United. I expect him to come off around the 70th. But listen, João Pedro can still, let's say, make an impact against United because how bad they are. So I'm going to go with João Pedro. But more importantly, let's talk on my chip strategy going forward. Okay, so I've gone on Plan FPL just to explain my decision making over the next couple of weeks and making it easier for you lot to visualize why I've gone with this strategy over the next couple of weeks. So this is clearly my Game Week 5 team. I've explained my selection already. Game Week 6 is a popular wildcard window because a lot of people are going to be wanting to bring in, let's say, Manchester City assets. I can do that with how many free transfers I have right now. And that would mean I would move Ollie Watkins to Erling Haaland, captain Erling Haaland. I'm moving Salah down to Semenyo, who has Leeds away. The reason I prefer doing that is that also then allows me to captain or triple captain Erling Haaland against Burnley. Obviously, Man City have been hot and cold this year, but Erling Haaland has been physically and performance-wise the best I've seen him in a very, very long time. With Erling Haaland on such good form, I'd rather target a Burnley at home fixture. Of course, let's say triple captain is not the strongest chip in the game. There's going to be other windows that you could potentially use a triple captain in. But I don't mind that Burnley fixture. And also, the rest of my team for Game Week 6 then will look relatively, let's say, strong. Stells, Murillo against Sunderland at home. Cucurella against Brighton at home. Pedro Porro against Wolves at home. Elliot Anderson then again at Sunderland at home. Semenyo, Leeds away. Gakpo, Crystal Palace away, which is tough. Ndiaye, West Ham at home, brilliant fixture. Bruno Fernandes, Brentford away, which is a decent fixture on paper. Erling Haaland, like we've already spoken about, against Burnley at home. And then also João Pedro against Brighton away. Then, Game Week 7 is a week where I will have 3 free transfers. And Game Week 7 now is going to be a week where if you, let's say, wildcarded in Game Week 6 is to get in Arsenal assets for, let's say, the good run that they're going to have in Game Week 7, for example. I can then move Cucurella that up to, or let's say sideways, moves to Gabriel, who has West Ham at home. I want Gabriel for that because especially how West Ham are defending corners has been appalling. So you want to target that. I can also go with João Pedro to Gyökeres. And the reason I do that is João Pedro then has Liverpool, which is a tough fixture. Gyökeres has West Ham. My plan is now to wildcard in Game Week 8. The reason a lot of people say, why don't you just, let's say, roll that transfer from João Pedro to Gyökeres is, I feel like that West Ham at home is a very, very good fixture to target. Could Gyökeres get 2 or 3 goals if his minutes are all right? I think the answer to that question is yes. So I've gone with that because then it also allows me to stay relatively strong for game week 7, allowing me to target the fixtures. The reason why I want to, let's say, wildcard in game week 8 now is, by the way, this is not my game week 8 wildcard. I'm just using this for the graphic. I think in game week 8 is going to be an interesting week in terms of Liverpool and Manchester United at home. A lot of people, if you wildcard in game week 7, are not going to have many Liverpool assets. Liverpool normally against Manchester United at home perform relatively well from an attacking point of view. That then allows me to reassess over the last couple of weeks how Mo Salah would have done for Liverpool. Also, the game week 8, in my opinion, was the first week where I could expect Alexander Isak to start in the Premier League. After the international break, he would have got minutes for Sweden again. He would have probably got minutes for Liverpool at that point. So that could be very, very interesting on a game 8 wildcard, having Alexander Isak, who would then at that point be a very good differential in terms of a lot of people probably won't have him kind of thing, or won't think of him, or let's say struggle to pivot towards an Alexander Isak. So that's something I thought of. Also, this is, let's say, from game week 8 to let's say game week 11, do Liverpool have better fixtures than Manchester City? I think the answer to that question is yes. So then again, if you're on game week 6, you probably want to, let's say, or game week 8 to game week 11, you want to pivot towards Liverpool again with, let's say, Mo Salah, because he's a better captaincy option. The reason I say that is game week 9, Liverpool have Brentford. I think that's a better fixture for Liverpool, whereas Manchester City have Aston Villa. Game week 10, Manchester City have Bournemouth, which is a very difficult game. Liverpool have Aston Villa. You probably expect Liverpool to score more goals than, let's say, Manchester City against Bournemouth. And in game week 11, they're playing one another, so it don't really matter. But it's just something that you want to keep an eye on in terms of who you're looking to captain. And as I said, many people are not going to have Liverpool assets. So that's something where I think I could differentiate while still keeping relatively strong in game week 6 and game week 7. And listen, I'm going to go wildcard in game week 8. Game week 9, I'm still going to have 2 free transfers, which will leave me in a very, very good spot. Because obviously now you can roll your transfers throughout a wildcard or through here. So that's now my thinking. Triple captain game week 6. Wildcard game week 8, just because I want the information after the international break. And then bench boost, I think 11 potentially could be a good week. Because realistically, you're trying to time your bench boost when Burnley have a good fixture. Because the Bradfords are only good or only 4 million keeper that's starting. So that's my thinking behind it. I want to know what people think, because a lot of people are going to say, Baines, you've got 4 free transfers going into game week 6. You can wildcard and then roll those transfers throughout after that. That is a possibility. But I think my team for game week 6, if I make a Haaland and Semenyo move, look relatively strong. Game week 7, Gabriel and Gyökeres look relatively strong. So that is my thinking behind it. I just really think with game week 8, with the extra information that I'll get, with the potential of Alexander Isak and Liverpool, I could really then push my rank even further. But listen, only time will tell. I hope you enjoyed my thinking behind when I want a wildcard now. Make sure you guys like the video. Comment your thoughts on, let's say, my chip strategy. If you lot want help on it, let me know down below in the comment section. And subscribe to the channel. And we will be back soon.